Test, test. Test, test. All right, I'm good. Thanks.
Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting, April 13th, 2022. We appreciate the attendance. There seems to be some interest here in some of the items on our agenda tonight. Tonight with us is Tyler Riggs, myself, Brian Marble, and Bob Perry. Michael Fortune is the chairman of this committee. He is out ill, probably be for one more month, and so I am covering as the chairman tonight. They tell me I'm doing an okay job, so they invited me back again. We're going to start with a pledge. Yes, we're going to start with a pledge of allegiance, and Tyler's going to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we need to approve the minutes for meeting held on March 23rd last month. Bob, you had some changes you wanted to make?
Well, I think we need some additions.
Okay.
If we go down to lines 29, 30, and 31, we will see that Brian, you weren't listed as a vote,
Okay.
either nay, yay, or abstain. And if we go to also lines 81, 82, 83, the same thing. Lines 123, 124, 125, another vote was taken and you're not there. And the last one would be 132, 133, 134. We need to get you on the paper. Okay.
I think I mistakenly thought that he didn't have a vote as the vice chair, so.
What I do?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just go through this quick. 29.
Yeah.
That was a yay on line number 29. Line 80. That was also a yay. Lines 125.
123.
23. That was also a yay.
And 132.
Motion to end the meeting. I don't think I agreed on that. No, that was yes. Okay, we always agree. Yes, that was a yay as well. Okay. Tyler, anything?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Line 126. I believe we need to eliminate that Rowan Cecil was excused, as earlier on line 121. It says he seconded the motion, so he was involved in that vote. He was not excused.
So I would suggest that we change 126 from excused to arrived late. Oh, it says arrived late later in the meeting. And then it says Michael, again, Michael was excused. So does that make sense now, Tyler?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes for the last meetings with the changes that have been made?
I'll make that a motion
I'll second that.
with the corrections.
Okay.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You get that, Tyler?
Gotcha.
Okay. There's no nays. Okay. Next item up. We're going to ask for public comments These are comments that can be made by the public on any topic. There are 2 times tonight where we're going to ask for public comments. Tonight is the general time to make public comments. And later on, we're going to specifically have a public hearing on zoning of some parcels, and there'll be public hearing there as well. Is there anyone who would like to make public comments now generally regarding the planning process in the planning commission? Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, thank you for coming too. We appreciate you when you participate. Next item tonight is CAPSA. We've got a representative from CAPSA here tonight, and we're going to give her a few minutes to chat with us. If you'd come to the microphone and introduce yourselves. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sarah Fitzgerald. I'm the Chief Communications Officer with CAPSA, and I'm here to present to you and your council about Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is during the month of April. It's a sobering topic, but it's a really important one for everybody to hear about. So I want to start by sharing just a few numbers. In the past year, in 2020, we received over 750 crisis calls at CAPSA where sexual assault or rape was the primary issue.
You're talking about in Logan, in Cache County.
In Cache Valley. This also does include parts of Rich County as well. Caseworkers spent over 8,000 hours working with sexual assault survivors. Therapists spent over 2,800 hours in therapy with sexual assault survivors, and we responded to 39 CODAR exams, which are sexual assault examinations that take place at Cache Valley Hospital. In the past year, CAPSA served over 288 clients who experienced a sexual assault, and in January and February of this past year alone, we've already helped almost 100 sexual assault clients, which is a higher number than we've seen in recent years. We know that individuals in our communities are experiencing sexual assault and rape, and we want to talk about the best way we can respond to that, which is to start by believing. Start by Believing is actually a national campaign, and we've partnered with Utah State to communicate this program countywide. And the reason for that is when we start by believing, we help survivors on their journey to find hope and healing. So when asked, CAPSA staff responded as to why they start by believing. Their answers were, I start by believing because everyone deserves the right to be heard and supported. I start by believing because no one should have to go through the aftermath of a sexual assault alone. I start by believing because so many others question or don't believe survivors. I start by believing because I want to stop the cycle of sexual violence. I start by believing because it can make all the difference in the life of a survivor. And we know this to be true, and starting by believing can make all the difference. One survivor wrote to us thanking us and sharing her story. She said, I received help at a time in my life where I truly felt as though I had no one to talk to, nor someone to help me through what I was going through. Similar to other women, I felt heard, believed, trusted, and validated. Thank you for believing me. We're really grateful for this community support in helping stop sexual assault and violence, and we really appreciate the time being here tonight. Are there any questions?
How is CAPSA funded? Is it a private only, or is there some public money involved as well?
CAPSA is a nonprofit 501c3. 70% is funding through grants, typically federal and state funding, and the rest of the percentage, 30%, is through private funding and donations.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now,
You
do
bet.
we need something? to
Yes,
sign
so I'm
something here?
hoping that you guys could go ahead and just sign this pledge board that I have right here to start by believing with your names. And then I'll grab a quick photo of you guys and we'll make sure to tag Providence City on our social media. Thank you.
Thank you. Picturables?
We sure do. Of course.
Scary.
You'll break your camera.
You guys, you just want to hold it in the middle right there. I'll just take it over right here. All right, 1, 2, 3. Closer one. 1, 2, 3. Thank you
so
guys,
much.
and that's
Thank you.
for you to keep in your main lobby and show people as they walk in. Okay.
We have a couple other commission members. We'll just get them to sign that later on.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, sir. You don't need to stay all night. You can go late tonight. It shouldn't go too late. Okay. We're gonna go next to our public hearings. We have one public hearing tonight. And I will just go ahead and read it verbatim. So we understand what's going on, what we're gonna try to do tonight. The public hearing is zoning of parcels 2, 4, and 1 and 2, 4, and 2, known as the Vineyard North Phase. The Providence City Planning Commission will take comments and questions regarding a request from Visionary Homes to zone parcels 2, 4, and 1 and 2, 4, and 2, located in the general area of 6 South and South 10th East. Parcels are currently in the annexation process, and zone requests seek to have them zoned as agriculture. So anytime we do an annex, when the property, if the property is annexed, then there needs to be a zoning assigned to it. And Visionary Homes is asked that we take we have asked public to come and give us comments on annexing these 2 parcels. And when they're annexed, the hope is by Visionary that they can have them zoned as agriculture. Now, maybe staff doesn't need to come in at this point. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just go down the list here of those who would like to make public comments. And if you're not on this list, that's fine. We'll open it up and you'll need to come up and sign it, and then you go ahead and make your comments. If you could keep them to 3 minutes, we'd appreciate it. More importantly, our families at home would appreciate it. The first one is Bruce Johns.
Mine is a question more than a comment. If I understand correctly, this was initially advertised as something that would become high residential, and then within the last month was changed to agricultural. And yet it is owned by Visionary Homes. Since we just had a recent vote about whether a proposal should go through to have high residential accepted, and I believe it was fairly soundly voted down, then it seems unusual to know what is going on now and how this fits into a larger plan for Visionary Homes. Many of us probably don't really believe or trust the Visionary Homes is satisfied with growing grain, and would like to have some confidence, that this group has heard the vote and respects the vote of the citizens of Providence, and B, that should there be a change from agricultural later, if this was accepted as agricultural, that we would be given sufficient notice that this would not be something that was done in a corner.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a real quick question, Bruce. There was 2 issues in that proposition 1. And you're saying that you are, you'd rather not have high density in that area. And what about the annexation?
Again, the annexation probably depends on what the purpose is. I believe that most citizens of Providence understand that that parcel of ground is owned by Visionary Homes and that they have a right to develop. What they develop is determined, though, by this group and the city council. High density, I think, for the most part, is what was responded to by the community when they had a negative vote about this recently. So I think it's mostly about high density that people were trying to respond.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, how do we get our name on that list?
You can, at the end of the list, I'll call and you can come up, sign it, talk. It's a public hearing. Okay. Next, Jeanette. Your lovely husband. Oh, I'm sorry, you're the lovely one.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Come smack you.
I'll get you for that, Brian.
My concerns are agriculture will be great if that's the way it's stayed. But I'm like Mr. James, they're a little bit uncertain about what their long-range plans are for Visionary and that in the areas. And as I'm looking at some of the newer developments that they are doing and measuring roads and things like that, in the one that's currently there that Visionary just did in the first phase of Vineyard, the roads from asphalt to asphalt are 21 feet wide. It requires 18 feet to take a fire engine through. If you have cars parked on both sides and say your car is 5 feet wide, that takes 10 feet out of that. That leaves us with 11 feet. There's no way a fire engine can make it through. That concerns me a great deal as we go into, if it's agriculture, it stays that way, that's great. But if it moves into being developed, I think we need to seriously look at how wide we make some of those roads. The other aspect is homes are so close to the road that if you pull a car like I own, a Honda Pilot, into the driveway and leave it parked in the driveway, it just about hangs over the sidewalk. As we talked with principals and Visionary explained that most of these homes are being targeted to families of middle income, mostly with kids who are middle school or high schoolers. That definitely means more cars. Those driveways will be full. And if you don't put no parking along the sides of the streets, I have real concerns. We watched a fire on the north end of Providence happen about a year ago. And it took the 2 sides of the homes that were next to it because there's such close proximity, destroying the siding that was on both of those homes. So as we look at distancing, I understand trying to make homes on smaller lots so people can afford them. I get that. But I think as we look at high density, we have to be very cautious that we look at also the services that need to be provided. Because of personal situations, I'm very familiar with ambulances and fire engines coming frequently. And they need to be there, and they need to be there quickly, or we lose everything.
There is a process that the developer must go through if they're going to develop roads, that they have to work with the fire marshal and fire department and get their full approval as to the size of the vehicles, the ability to turn around. It's a very important part of the commitment that they make.
And that was done if there's no parking on those streets, but there are no signs on those streets in that development that say no street parking. So there needs to be a place for guest parking or for other cars to be able to park that needs to be incorporated in the one that's currently being developed. Because they go, okay, 21 feet is wide enough for a fire engine to get down. as long as there's no one parked on the street. But there's no signs there currently that say no parking. Okay, that's
you.
all I have, thanks.
Barbara Moon, please.
Hi, Jeanette and Bruce have already said a lot of my points, but
Would you just mention your name
Barbara Moon
into the mic? Okay,
and
thanks.
in Providence. My concern is I don't understand why they're wasting your time right now with going through this agriculture annexation rather than telling us the truth of the plan that it will eventually be. I feel like, yeah, we'll all come back next month and complain again when it's single family high again or some other thing. Why are you allowing this to proceed without an official plan that we can see and that you can see? I want to protect the residents that live there. I am very concerned about the emergency access. I'm concerned about garbage truck access. I'm concerned about snowplow access. And yeah, while it says, well, there is no limit on street parking, that causes a big problem for people. And there have been incidents very recently where an emergency vehicle was not able to get in, and that is a concern. And just in general, just because something is legal does not mean it's in the best interests of the citizens of Providence, whether it's current citizens or future. And I feel like there has been more respect given to the developer than to the citizens of Providence who are willing to put this up for referendum again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Might I make a comment?
Go ahead.
I have noticed in a few of them and realizing some concern. The Planning Commission can certainly have any recommendation out of here for any zoning you have. In some of the discussions, because this was under referendum and it had two parts together in it, the discussion about having it potentially come as agriculture, which is currently zoned countywide. Some of that discussion comes from staff saying, wait a minute, you're going a little fast. Let's pull back and just deal with the annexation piece to see if the public has an interest in the annexation. The ability for a visionary to take a step back and say, okay, we'll just talk. I mean, it does annexate, it does assign an agricultural zone, but some of that I've got to take that staff is responsible to say, wait a minute, we want to make sure it is annexation a true problem. If it is, we definitely want to make sure that we've heard that voice. And if the majority of the public is opposed to annexation, the only way we can help to have both of those issues judged on their merits is kind of that agricultural side. So I would say that I don't know that Visionary is trying to pull anything over. I think we all know they want to do something more, but this is the only way in which the process would allow kind of annexation to be decided by itself, and then it will require for them to do anything more than agriculture. It will require them to come through this public hearing process all over again, so that any zoning above can be held on its merits, independent of annexation. As you mentioned, if the annexation is the problem, we want to be able to hear that, but that is one piece. I don't want to throw Visionary totally under the bus, because we're trying at some point, you have to have a zone designation, but to bring them in under agriculture, it is a opportunity for annexation to be considered independent of any other zoning. So I just want to make sure that's clear. I don't think they're trying to pull anything. Now, if they want single family, they're going to come for something else or whatever. That may be different, but at some point that zoning, this is the only way to separate those. So they can be thrown under the bus for a lot of other things. I just want to let you know on that one. So they're going, so the annexation would go from the question of what are they doing? The annexation by itself is saying they're in unincorporated Cache County. Annexation would allow the boundary to be Providence City, and then it would define what the next conditions of that development would be. It would then be under the control of Providence to take it through next steps, rather than try to have several steps all jammed into one process. That kind of allows that. So anyway, I want to help that, and if that's the concern, I realize that, but I just want to help.
We get some questions, some hands raised, but we're not going to address those right now. We're going to go to, I believe it's Charlie. Charlie. A very fancy S on the front of your name.
I have to say, I kind of think it was a mistake to split the two then, because I think the two are so interlinked that it just causes a lot of havoc and stuff.
And
because
your name?
Charlie Gallup, River Heights.
Okay.
So anyway, separating the two is probably given the public the wrong opinion, and maybe you should have told the public that that was your reasoning before we started all this. Okay, I have some questions about the feasibility study. So it was marked as done in 2018, but I believe there were some updates done to it. Was there another timestamp put on it? Because the conclusion is not the same as it was in 2018. So just wondering about that. Do we need a different timestamp because it's been revised?
You better tell us which paragraph you're
It's
asking.
the conclusion, 8.0. Scarlett?
Brian, can I?
Is that part of the legislative action?
That's the feasibility study that tells us how the property would stand up to development as
Right.
far as,
Okay, but it's been changed.
but it's
so-
been changed.
Yes, so my
I
question is-
think what we need to do is let the developer answer that. I don't know. I haven't taken time to read every paragraph compared to the old one to see what's changed and what isn't. So, but the feasibility study, some of that did have to change, because one thing that everybody realized is that the zoning that was proposed is not good zoning, and the feasibility study, or I won't say it's not good zoning, but it's not zoning that the public wanted. And the feasibility study is probably changed to reflect something a little different than that. So, but I will let the developer, when it comes time, let them answer that question.
Is there a lawyer here?
No,
You know?
well, we're not going to answer questions that way, but you will be addressing us in the legislative action, which we will be discussing next after the public hearing.
Okay.
So if you just keep a running, like you do, keep a running tab on the questions that are here. And I'm sure there'll be more of them that come up.
And I know this has been brought up numerous times, but I still can't wrap it around my head. Okay, so groundwater was found at 11 feet. According to your hazardous water table, any area where potential groundwater levels may occur within 12 feet of the natural grade is designated as a hazard water table area. Within a hazard water table area, no permit shall be issued or any construction or use until a conditional use permit has been obtained in compliance with the provisions. Were conditional use permits issued for all of those buildings in the vineyards?
Staff says they did.
They go through a conditional use process.
very
They have
good.
to apply.
It also says that the authority showing that no basement or cellar to be built, and that the percentage of the lot, parcel, or site to be covered by buildings, parking spaces, and paved surfaces does not exceed 40% of the area of the lot. Was that followed with your conditional use permit? Or what were the variances that were allowed?
The engineering study also allowed that a ground drain, if done appropriately, would allow for basements. So every home that came in, some of the came in on slab on grade, so they do not have basements. The ones that do
So
have basements,
conditional use permit allowed it to not have, to allow basements, and to not follow the 40% maximum coverage?
They can have basements if they connect to that land drain, which they all have done, because their study showed that even with the groundwater, a land drain would be an acceptable mitigation strategy.
So what did you do about the percentage of the lot that like there should only have been 40% of the land covered? That's also part of your code. So that was just mute, like it didn't matter.
No, that was all approved. That actually, the placement of those buildings was all approved before they started coming for conditional use. It was approved through the platting process, through the actual development and platting process. And so what we looked at was what was approved by the actual platting process that they went through, and their buildings were put in the place that they were shown on those plats that were approved through the Planning Commission and then the City Council.
Okay, to only cover 40% of the area.
Yes, well, I don't know the exact percentage, but whatever was approved on that,
Okay,
on those plats.
all right, very good. Okay, then I'm just curious about the timestamp for the feasibility study to see like what other, like if there needs to be a new one put on, because obviously there were changes made since 2018. And then I just hope that you guys will take your citizens' concerns, really take them to heart and act and listen and reflect that when you make your decision.
Thank you. Cheryl Eames. This is going to be under 3 minutes, right?
I cut down. I've spent all day preparing. I've cut down. My name is Cheryl Eames. I live in Providence. I'd like to quote from an email that I hope you received from Laura Fisher today that said, in the event that you are leaning toward recommending approval of this application to the Providence City Council, please consider that any restrictions on future use of that property, once it's annexed, would have to be included in the initial request. Please in the initial approval in order to prevail once annexation has taken place. I've been told by Don Calderwood, former mayor, and I've looked through the state code. I think he's accurate that you cannot recommend to the city council, nor can they approve or disapprove any request that vineyards may make or zone if they meet all the requirements of that particular zone. So the fact that they are going to have plenty of time to plenty of opportunity to make changes is not true. And I really hope Laura comes up and explains that better than I can. I went to a public hearing that the Cache County Boundary Board had on March 16th. And this was about this very item. There were no minutes for me to look at, so I went through the video. We have support from people other than those who are here. I remind you again, this is the Cache County Boundary Commission, and I'm going to read what I took from the tape of that meeting. It frustrates me, and I couldn't tell who it was. The only one I could tell is Kathleen Howell, who grew up here in Providence, and she says that because she's a woman. I could tell it was her. It frustrates me that a majority of their community would oppose it, and they tried it another way. Speaking of what they did, flipping over when we refused on
You're not coming through clear
I'm
on
not.
what your sound is. You're not coming through clear on the ideas that you're concerned about. You mentioned them, but
I'm talking about they're supporting this
There.
this Cache County Boundary Commission.
okay,
These are the things they said at the public hearing,
fine.
and that they are. When I get,
Okay.
I hope it explains it as I get on. I'm starting at where they were. This is what the members of the commission were saying. That's just what I was going to say, that it frustrates me. You use the word muddled. This got voted down. We're going to change what we're going to do. He's quoting what he thinks the applicants are doing. They're changing what they're going to do. This doesn't taste very good. It's going against what people thought. The law does say, and a reason for the court and a reason for denying the request is that the courts will generally not uphold a boundary adjustment to go to a different municipality in order to increase your profits or to make more money by going from one municipality to the other. Now they're just talking back and forth with each other. That's outside the scope of what our responsibilities are here, but I do think that it gives context to the greater picture. Now, this is what Kathleen said. She's a Croshaw. She grew up here. I have some of the same concerns that are in these petitions. I grew up there. I understand the concerns when they talk about traffic. They're real concerns. I can make my own assumptions about what effect will have traffic in both communities. But this body deals with the annexation. Speaking of the Boundary Commission, it doesn't deal with the zoning. The referendum, another person said, the referendum does tell you something. Someone else said, I do know that if I lived in the area of either Providence or River Heights, I'd be upset. And then another one said, I do think it would be against the officials of the city if they don't listen to the citizens. Someone else said, an elected official should fulfill the will of the people. And another one said, the problem of annexation is what happens after. Another one said, listen to the people who elect you. Now, they talked a bit about the access, and I'd like to bring to your attention in the documents that were presented by the applicant, it looked like this. And they have possible access locations into the annexation plat include 600 south on the north, 100 east, 1000 east on the east, 170 east on the south, and that is a road that's there now. Then they say 225 east on the south, but if you go drive up the road that's closest to 6 South, there's a house number 228, and right next to it is a house number 224. So where's this street on 225 east gonna go? Then another one they say is 245 east on the south, and there's houses there, 260 and then around the corner is 528. So their information they're giving you is absolutely inaccurate. There's nowhere that they can give a road onto 6 South except for that one that is 170 east that's already present. Leads me to question the veracity of anything that's in that document.
Okay. Cheryl? Yes. The two questions in mind are you for or against the high density?
I'm against the high density.
And how about the annexation?
The annexation does not bother me. And I had considerable amount of material indicating that from other people indicating that. I don't think we're against the annexation.
Okay.
The citizens are not.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. Nice to see you. Okay, Loretta Buckley. Did I get that right? Tell me how to say it. Tell me anyway.
Loretta Buckley.
Okay.
I'm new here. Lived in Logan 45 years ago. We retired from military government service and have retired back here. We own a lot and are currently living over in the Gateway Townhomes. I don't know, is the annexation process required for them for Visionary to build? Or
to receive services from the city.
okay,
Water,
yeah, I'm
sewer,
just getting familiarized with that. I personally am against it. Living in a high density place right now, the children where we live, they don't have any room, any grass, any place to play. They play in the roadway between our driveways because our street is actually, our driveways all face each other. These children are playing in there. I'm seeing children playing in the dumpsters. We hear footballs hitting our garage doors all day long, especially on the weekends when they're playing. They play road hockey and whatever. I don't think that the plan is there for families. Right now where we're at, they don't have the infrastructure just to support the 168 homes that are there almost finished. And, they haven't finished out that spot. And I think that high density could be managed or planned better with more family-friendly open space for these children to play and grass. But to have children playing in the retention pond area, because that's the only grass area, I think is a problem. You know, that's designed as a water retention for water runoff. While it's beautiful grass, it certainly doesn't meet the children's needs. So I personally, if they're looking for the city support on the annexation, I think Providence City should think twice about it, because what's to stop them once they have the annexation to put in a request to change it from agricultural back to high density, and then we'll have a gateway part two.
Okay. So what the public hearing is about is annexation.
Annexation.
They want to keep the same zoning that's on the property now,
Okay.
which is agriculture, and move it over. So just as a point of clarification.
Okay.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, we've got others that would like to speak tonight in the public hearing. I'm sorry, there's a lady that rose her hand first in the back with beautiful white hair.
I'll let a lady go first.
I didn't say old. Come on. Would you come up and sign, please? Right next to the X. Thanks for coming tonight.
I'm Allison Olson, and I think great points have been made. I loved what she just said. Now I'm concerned about families, because I think that, yeah, some people do want a home with not a lot of grass area, but you still have to, if you're going to have these kind of high density places, you've got to have big parks right by where the kids can go. But one of my concerns I want to bring up is the roads again, because when you have roads that are, I'm for the people that are in the vineyard. If you've got roads, we're saying we're doing this for the people, but if you're making roads that they have to pay to maintain, that is not for the people. I want to see roads that the city will have to maintain, and that that we will have places for people to park, and that they're now I've lost my train of thought with the other thing I was going to say. But the promised amenities, that the pool they promised doesn't end up being a hot tub pool, that it's the pool they've planned in the beginning to put there, a nice pool, and nice areas and I know the annexation right now, the agricultural is not doing this, but I want the visionary to know that we care about the people that are there. We want to make it a nice place for them to live too, and not let them put as much in as they can so they can make more money on it. It needs to be a nice place to live.
Okay. Now, just a point of clarification on the amenities. We've addressed the amenities. This has been 4 or 5 months ago, and created adjusted statutes to make sure that those amenities are done before the profit goes to the developers, so that there's a lot of incentive for them to finish the amenities a long time before everything else is done. So, okay, next, come on up in the blue here, sir. If you could sign there on the X. Pine needles on your shirt.
Feathers or pine
Feathers,
needles?
okay.
Well, my name is Jason Thompson. I am the current mayor of River Heights. You know, as I don't remember the lady's name that was quoting from the Boundary Commission meeting. I was recently elected to sit on the County Boundary Commission. I sat in that meeting. I abstained because of a potential conflict of interest. However, I did vocalize a lot of my thoughts and concerns in that meeting, a lot of which were quoted by her tonight. So it was interesting to hear my own quotes being quoted in this meeting. There's one point that I would like to make, and that is that annexation and density or zoning designation with regard to Visionary Home and this parcel and these parcels are inseparably connected. They are not choosing to come in under agricultural. They are coming in under agricultural because that is what the law requires, that they come on in, if they're going to be annexed, they have to either request an annexation type or come in with what the surrounding land is or requires. So that's why they're coming in under agricultural. I know from conversations that I had that the reason that this is being done is the city is trying to use this process to determine whether or not this is an annexation issue or it's a density issue. And it's not a fun game for the city to be playing that with their citizens. I do not agree with the way the city is going about trying to poll the opinions of the Providence public on whether or not this is an annexation issue or a density issue. I will read for you from Proposition 1. On March 12, 2019, Providence City Council unanimously passed Ordinance 2019-004, quote, annexation of and zone assignment for parcels numbered, and then the two numbers. The referendum was both a referendum regarding annexation and density. So tonight, when we are talking about annexation, we're talking about density. We're talking about visionary homes. Visionary homes, they're not, it's already been said, they're not growing wheat. Okay. So we need to take that into mind. What did the people say? What did 81% of Providence residents say in the referendum? It was loud and clear. Loud and clear.
To tell us what's your opinion is.
They were against annexation and high density. They were against annexation and high density. And I think that the Providence voters are smart enough to know in this case that annexation equals an attempt at getting at the highest density possible. Why? Because if I own visionary homes, guess what I would do? I would try and get the highest density possible. That's business. When I was on when I was in the Boundary Commission meeting, the conclusion, and I'm really frustrated with the conclusion, I respect my colleagues, but I completely disagree with their conclusion, was that we're going to rubber stamp this. We're going to be a rubber stamping commission. We're going to rubber stamp it because they checked the boxes and they filled out their forms and they noticed the public. So we're going to just go ahead and stamp this and say, hey, the protest that we're hearing, we're going to disregard that. And the reason, the conclusion, if you go and listen to the tape, the conclusion at the end, the reason why was landowner rights. And my question to this commission with regard to annexation, is it landowner rights or is it developer rights over landowner rights? That's the question we have to ask. I am all about landowner rights, but why is it a developer's right more important than the landowners that surround it? And I think tonight, this is representative of what the landowners around that parcel of land feel. And I love this process. I love it. I love watching the people come and share their thoughts and feelings, but I am frustrated because several of them that have come up have been confused about the annexation and the density, because what the city has recommended, hey, let's do this, because if we do this, it'll help us kind of get a feel for what the people think. No, it's confused the daylights out of people. This is an annexation issue and it's a density issue. I know I've gone over my 3 minutes. I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, for an additional 2 minutes if you would grant that.
Okay.
I want to go into the state law and where I feel the Boundary Commission got this thing wrong. Okay, when they refused to listen to the protests of River Heights, and I'll share with you a couple of the protests that we have in the state law. This is, and I'll give you the reference. It's 10-2-403, subsection 5. If practicable and feasible, the boundaries of an area proposed for annexation shall be drawn to eliminate islands and peninsulas of territory that is not receiving municipal type services. This annexation would create an island. of county land. It would create an island of county land. Okay, that's illegal in the state of Utah. Now the county says, hey, we're okay with it. Well, the county can say they're okay with it, but when Providence City goes to annex and they create an island, that is against state law.
Parcels in question would be an island.
The parcel that
Left behind?
no, so you've got just to the west of this parcel are the paces that are cushioned right in between the elementary school and River Heights property to the north. You annex this land, it creates an island of county land between River Heights on the north, River Heights on the west, county land, and then Providence. That is illegal. Okay. Next, to facilitate the consolidation of overlapping functions of local government. Okay. River Heights, we have a huge stake in what happens with that land. A huge stake. 600 South is a River Heights road. And you know what? We get to determine ingress and egress on 600 South. But even if we were to prevent ingress and egress onto 600 South and require it to go out to a 1000 East, guess what? You just go around and go down 600 South. It's going to be significant impacts on traffic. Okay. To promote the efficient delivery of services and to encourage the equitable distribution of community resources and obligations. We've not been brought to the table to have these conversations to start working through some of these issues. That's why we protested, in part, the annexation. Why else did we protest the annexation?
You say we, you're talking
The
about
city of River Heights.
Okay.
The city of River Heights protested this annexation. The streets surrounding the proposed annexation area, 1000 East and 600 South, were not designed for substantial increased traffic. River Heights Elementary School and Providence Elementary School cannot accommodate student capacity that density will bring. As of current, River Heights Elementary School is 114% capacity. Providence Elementary School is 109% capacity.
Been that way how long?
This is since last year. These are last year's numbers. Okay.
It's been that way for 20 years.
I don't have statistics Mr. Chairman, I would really appreciate for the record that we don't. I'm not going to go and conjecture, and I would appreciate it if you wouldn't conjecture so that we don't get confusion here in the room. The issue is higher density will, without question, bring impacts to the schools. Now, we can argue all day that that's the city council's, it's not the city's problem, it's the school district's problem to deal with. Well, I'm sorry, it's a family problem. It's a political problem. It's a problem that a lot of these people sitting in this room have to deal with when they have extra kids in their classes and less time, one-on-one time with teachers. The current annexation petition already talked about creating an island. The most important thing, the current annexation petition goes 100% against the voice of the people. And I will say this is not a threat. I'm not here to threaten anybody. I think the threat is behind. But I am here to say that if this recommendation for annexation goes forward to the council, that the size of the number of people in the room at the city council meeting will probably quadruple this. And if it even moves forward past that, the referendum that we saw this last November, we ain't seen nothing yet. So my recommendation tonight, or my request tonight, is that we don't try and disconnect annexation from density, which is what I know that the city is trying to do. They're trying to feel what the citizens feel like. That's too confusing. It's confusing everyone. In this case, annexation is a density issue. They're inseparably connected. River Heights opposes the annexation that's being requested currently until we can sit down with Providence City and the builders and work through the 3 or 4 items that are specifically mentioned in the state code okay, that are going to have direct impacts on our city. So our request tonight would be that you would not recommend annexation to the city council. And if you do, we'll be back and we'll continue that conversation with the city council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming tonight. Right on the X.
Okay, I'm Rita Nelson. I'm from River Heights. I also have extreme concerns about coming out onto 600, as he mentioned, regardless of what that is annexed. There's trouble already on that street. I'm a crossing guard at the corner. A lot of people coming from Providence bring their kids there. It's already a problem. This planning commission has the responsibility to protect current and future citizens, not just of Providence, but of River Heights also. Please recommend against annexation until Visionary tells the truth and about their plans and future density. I want them to come with a plan and show you what they're going to annex. What is the hurry? What are we rushing for? Why do you guys need to make a decision about this until they come with their honest, truthful plan? Again, they're not going to grow, wheat and alfalfa, what they've been growing there, I guess, since I was a child. Why not give it 10 more years or whatever until they come with a plan? What is your hurry? That's my question.
Asking us.
Yeah. What is the hurry to make a decision? Why do you care if it sits in the county?
You feel that this is being rushed? The last 2 years have been rushed through?
No, to annex it in to the city under agriculture with absolutely no plan of what they're going to do. Do you know what Visionary's plan is? Have they told you what their plan is?
No, they've not, but they do have a track record.
Right, of high density. And why was the referendum put on? Because of their track record. I do have a question I would like Visionary to answer later.
Go ahead, he'll write it down.
Okay.
He'll address it.
Okay, I'm gonna ask, the homes that are built currently are in our neighborhood and ward. Many people in that area have told us, and I really want the truth, have told us that if they talk bad about Visionary, they tell us anything bad that happens, that signing and closing has been said that their warranty will be voided. Obviously I'm not the only one that's heard it. Many others have heard that. Their warranty will be voided, or they can't talk bad. There's something illegal that will happen if they talk bad. I've heard that from multiple people, and I'm just curious to know if that's true or not. And I really hope that you would tell the truth on that. But my question is, what's the hurry? Why are we hurrying?
Why do you think that there's a hurry? Do you see something that's in a hurry here?
Yeah, there's a public hearing to decide if it's going to be annexed or not, right?
The annexation process on these parcels has been in the process for, I'm guessing, 3 to 4 years. So I don't see that this is a.
But to annex it under agriculture.
Under agriculture, this is the first time that we've.
Right, correct. Yeah, why don't you dig deeper and find out what they're actually going to do in the end process?
Because they have no.
Don't tell me they don't have any idea, because I know they have an idea.
Ideas. I'm grateful for them. Let them invest their money wherever they want to.
Exactly, I agree.
But when it comes to what are their plans, if whatever plans they tell us, they don't have to follow them. They have to follow the statutes that the city has set forth, that the city council has set forth, that we've recommended to the city council. They need to follow those statutes.
Right. What I'm asking is that you deny the annexation. Listen to the citizens, because I helped with the referendum, and trust me, we're on track to do another one if it's not listened to.
Okay, so you're against the high density, obviously.
100%.
And the annexation?
Yeah, if it's going like this, absolutely.
No, I'm sorry, the annexation. Why are you against the annexation?
Because I would like them to come with a plan.
Okay,
Besides
the plan
agriculture.
Okay, the plan is not, this is not a step for them yet. If they want to develop it into something, they will come to the city and they will ask the city, we would like it rezoned for this reason.
Is there a reason it can't sit in county for a while longer?
I no, why, but it's their property. They've asked that it be annexed into the city. So we're considering that.
Okay, or the city could buy it and put a park there. I mean,
Yeah,
you
the
know.
city's just full of money, I'm sure.
Thank you for your time.
Bruce, you want to come back up again?
I've been in mental health for a long time. And one of the things that went on between agencies, as we talked about some of the problems that we had, there was a saying that said, whoever's got the body has the problem. In this case, whoever brings in the land has the problem. To that end, the pressure to develop will go. If you bring in this annexation, then the pressure is now on you, on Providence, to develop. Now, as long as that annexation does not occur, the pressure is left somewhere out in the ethos. Once you do this, if you were to do this, then the issue of, and you actually said it yourself, you have an idea what visionaries' ultimate goal would be, but you have no control over what they might actually do, and they can change their plans at any time. What this commission can do is they cannot be a part of it. They can refuse to be a part of it until, as was mentioned, there is a long-term plan that is well specified. The mayor of River Heights was laid out very well what the risks are for annexation. How much do we need? It feels like there is a push towards annexation that is coming from where? I don't understand the push. And it seems to me like the most valuable place to stand is in a neutral place where we don't take on responsibility for fulfilling the expectations of a developer.
What would you suggest, Mr. Johns?
I would be against annexation.
No, I'm saying, what would you suggest that Visionary Homes do with the property that they own up there? What would be the best? This is a business. It's worth a lot of money, and they've got some resources here, and they're saying, well, it looks like we ought to do this. What would you suggest that they do instead of?
I would suggest what they do is that they create a plan that they can sell to the community. And then that having sold it to the community, then they can come to this commission, ask for annexation with the support of the community behind them. That would then easily, I think, make your jobs easier and make the community feel more like they have been understood and responded to. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, against the window, all the way in the back. Yeah, on the X. Don't worry, everybody's looking at you. Thank you, that's fine.
My name is Kim Goodspell, and I know that this opinion is going to be unpopular. I apologize, but I do feel like the other side should be voiced. We just bought a townhouse in the first half of Vineyard, and so I love Vineyard. I'm very pro annexation and pro even high density housing. I don't think a lot of people people who have owned their homes for a long time realize that Cache County is in a major housing crisis. It took us a year to find a house to buy. We put in so many bids and got outbid over and over again. And that year, our rent went up twice. Rent has gone up all over the valley. There's just a huge need for housing in the valley right now. And I think that's part of why there's a push to get this done right now. And so I think I understand their concerns, but I also understand the city has done feasibility studies. They wouldn't be moving forward with things if it wasn't feasible. And we do get our garbage taken out. Like, we have places for our children to play in Vineyard. I think it's been very well planned out. And I think that that will continue in the second half. So I would like to just voice my support for the annexation and to maybe prevent the other side that Vineyard is allowing young families like me and my family the opportunity to own a home in Cache Valley where we love.
Can you tell us the price if somebody was to buy one of the townhouses? Is that what they're
Yeah,
calling
we paid $365,000
it?
for our townhouse.
A year ago?
We locked in our contract 6 months ago, but I would like to mention we bid on probably 10 townhouses, and that was our bid on every single townhouse in the valley was $350 to $375. So they're not outrageously priced. All housing is outrageously priced right now, and the only solution to that is more housing.
Thank you. Okay, in the back, voice sweater.
Okay, so I apologize. I have a bunch of notes. Oh, sorry.
And they need you to sign at the X.
This sign?
Just sign. Or write or whatever. And then make sure you mention your name when you're talking to the mic.
Okay. My name is Hillary Farnsworth. I had a bunch of notes at home and I forgot them, so I was scrambling to recreate them. So I'm looking at this. I have a problem with the feasibility study. I know they've done 3. They actually only did 2 until the people that formed or before we formed it, we requested that they do another one. And then they did a 3rd. And I walked in here late, so I'm not sure. I don't understand how it got revised. That seems weird to me.
That's come on. It's been brought up a couple of times.
Okay. So I'm looking at the old one. I'm not looking at the new one.
Why don't you give us a date on the one you're looking at?
Yeah, it's June of 2019.
Thank you.
On page 5, it's section 3.7. It says that it's talking about the groundwater, and it says there are man-made irrigation confluences, and that's not true. There hasn't been man-made irrigation. That ground has watered itself all the time, and everybody that is around here knows that. Okay, and then the last sentence of that paragraph on that section says, a more detailed evaluation of the groundwater is beyond the scope of this investigation. And that's never been addressed. To my knowledge, it's never been addressed. And yeah, there's been 3, but they're not comprehensive enough. I mean, this is a squishy part of town. Like,
it is, but they're asking that it be made agriculture zoning.
okay, yes, and that sounds fair, but we all know what they're looking for. Everybody in this room.
We can all guess.
Yes.
Yes.
We all know.
I got my guess. You got your guess.
Yes.
Yes.
And we all know that they, like Mr. Thompson said, they're gonna push for high density all they want. And that's fine, that's their job. But planning and zoning's job is to make sure that we build good houses and we have a good community for the people that already live here. So going back to what Ruth Ann said, you guys were talking about what's the rush. Well, it's not that we're trying to stop them from rushing, but we are trying to stop them from sidestepping proper protocol. And you did talk about how they're not sidestepping any statute, but I think I can venture a guess that most people in Providence and that care about this issue think that there should be a statute that says, make a plan before we say, okay, can we do that at some point? Not just for visionary, but for
everything. I mean, that's cost the city a lot of money, to my knowledge, that there's not really a plan sometimes. And we have lawsuits and we have to
We
pay
have-
people out.
We have general plans, we have specific
Yeah.
transportation plans,
But wouldn't
we
that
have
be,
sewage plans. They're all, our city manager is famous for them, okay? He's put together a lot of the studies, not the
Okay.
studies, but he's put a lot of committees together to make sure that our plans are up to date as much as possible.
okay, but I mean, can there be a statute that says, show us what you're gonna do before you do it? Before we say yes?
That, you'd have to talk to a lawyer about that one.
Well,
There's some legal things there.
okay, but I
because
think
the-
I think planning and zoning should talk to a lawyer and try and do that, because that's what the people want. Is there to be a plan instead of just okaying however it is, you can have this much, you can have 5% over density, or, you know, whatever the rule is based on the zone. So I think that people would really appreciate that being addressed. Another thing I have an issue with is the reason everyone is here, even though you're just zoning it agriculture, Visionary does have a reputation and it's turning into a bad one, and we don't trust them. That's why we're all here. Let's see, you said something, I can't remember if it was Ruthann you asked, but you asked, what would you have Visionary do with their land? It's not, we didn't make them buy it. Across from Visionary, and across from Vineyard is the Bickmore's land. Have you seen their land?
I'm not familiar with the Bickmore.
Has a big sign on their land. It says, what do you guys want us to do with the land? Give us a call and tell us. They are asking for input because they don't want this kind of thing to happen, which I think is fair. Just ask the people around us. And this might be kind of unpopular too, but I actually don't have a problem with that density that's behind us. I don't have a problem with it. And if there is if there's a crisis for homes, which I agree there is, why are we letting them take up our good land near main arteries with townhomes and condos? Maybe they should be bigger. Like, let's just have a real plan that's smart. Don't say condos in the middle of a neighborhood and this stuff out here.
We're not arguing for condos. The discussion's not about condos.
Yeah, it's about agriculture, but it's about,
The density is 10 cows per acre. That's the density that we're talking about.
that's only technically though. That's only technically what we're talking about, right? That's only technically. So that's what I would say. Ask the people what they want before you buy it, or ask them now. It's not anyone's problem but Visionary if they're not going to get 10 times what they put into it. It's not our problem.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you. Cheryl, come on up.
Cheryl Williamson, from Providence. My granddaughter and her family live in Vineyard. There is a need for, it's not affordable housing. But there is a need for less expensive housing. I don't think any of us have any objection. It's the place. I bet you didn't have anybody come and object to what's happening down behind Macy's. We had no objections to that. I don't, and I rather suspect that others don't either. I think it's the placement of that kind of density that's bothersome.
Thanks. Okay, Howard, please. If you come up and sign. Next to the egg, not sign, just put your name down. Thank you, sir.
My name is Howard Christensen. I'm currently the chairman of the Historic Preservation Commission here in Providence. And my concern is with all this high density stuff, we're destroying the integrity of our city. of our historical city. You know, this city's been around since 1859. It was the second settlement in Cache Valley. But you know, right now we've heard about the schools. Right now, Providence Elementary School has got over 700 kids. And I understand next year it's going to increase even more than that. My daughter is saying that she's a 5th grade teacher there. She's saying that she's going to have at least 45 kids in her class. That's way too many kids. But kids aren't the problem. But the way I see it is the way it's been put to us, that they changed the thing from affordable housing to obtainable housing. And to my recollection, these houses still aren't obtainable by 90% of people. They're way over their price. My house is on Main Street and it's way overvalued. So we've got to do something like was done down across from the Ball Diamonds. When those houses were first built, they were low-cost housing.
Which side? Which side of the Ball Diamonds?
North.
Okay.
All those houses in there in north of, what is it, First North?
Yeah.
They were all low-cost houses. And you had to meet a certain salary cap in order to buy one of those. But now those houses are not obtainable. Even so, my idea is, and I've been told, and I understand that Visionary has sold everything they own up through 2024. You're not even going to be able to buy anything from them until after 2024, because everything they've got now is sold.
That would be true with any developer that designs and builds
I understand
residential homes.
I understand that, but like I said, my thing is I would like to see exactly what they have planned for that parcel of land. And if they want to put 300 houses on there, that's way too many. You know, I went through and I measured the roads. They're the ones in the Visionary right now. They're 20 to 21 feet wide. In the part of the town where that house burned, I went over there and measured those. Those are 35 feet wide. So why can't we have 30-foot wide roads? Why can't we make it part of the zone that they have to be at least that wide? Because right now, and it's true that the fire trucks need a minimum of 18 feet. And my concern is that if there's a fire over there in the vineyard, 90% of those houses are going to burn because they can't get fire trucks in there. So that's my concern. And I've lived in places where you can't even breathe because you're chock full of people and houses. That's why I like it in the old part of town where they've got bigger yards, bigger lots, and you're not on top of each other. So that's my concern. I don't like the idea that they're putting too many houses. Even when they're building out in Nibley, there's way too many houses on that piece of ground. So that's my concern.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go here. Who signed in? Who's in track? What? Right there. Thank you.
Sarah Stancliffe. I live in Providence.
Thank you.
I too have the unpopular opinion, and mine is that I'm for the annexation and I'm for the high density, and I live in Vineyard. And it's my neighbor, and our kids play together. And it's a beautiful place to live. And I'm really happy that we were able to get a place to live, because it really is a big problem not being able to get a place to live here. We were very lucky. And so I'm happy here, and I would like it to be annexed. And I also, maybe for selfish reasons, want it to be annexed because I know that that's probably going to be the area that they provide the amenities for the community that we're living in. And, you know, agriculture, it's probably going to be where the pool is and where the other stuff is. And we've been waiting for that stuff. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir. Next.
Hi, I'm Kevin Moon, resident of Providence. I have a few points to make. One, just to reiterate what's been said by some others here previously, that we're very well aware it's being proposed to be zoned as agriculture, but we're also very aware that that's not what the end goal is. We understand that the city is trying to tease out the two separate issues, but as what's been said to us, most of the residents here, you can't really separate. The high density house, or what zone does visionary want in the end should be tied directly to should we annex it or not, because that's the end. And so that is why people here are opposed to the annexation if agriculture is not the final destination zone for visionary. So that's the first point I wanted to make. Second, so any argument that was only about agriculture, that's not relevant here in mind. Second thing is also meant that, you know, what's the rush? It was mentioned this has been years in the making. Most of all that time it was tied up in the proposition, and so the plans were pretty stagnant through that time. So I also don't think that's a relevant thing to consider. We're also very well aware here that whatever happens tonight, visionary is going to probably come within a month or maybe 2 months tops with what zoning they really want in the end. So why not just do that? Let's just do that, have the annexation tied directly to what they want to do so that it can be very clear and well understood. Third point I want to make here is that Tyler Riggs here owns property in the Vineyard location. I've interacted with him on Facebook on these issues, but prior to the proposition, I know he may have a conflict of interest with regards to the expansion of, or the annexation of this property and wanting to expand, because that will have a direct impact on the amenities that he can have. And so I'd like to suggest that he may recuse himself from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a request that I had no idea? Could I make a request that Tyler publicly disclose that he's a resident of the Vineyards for the record?
I live at 173 East, 520 South. It is not one of the relevant properties that are being considered as part of the annexation. And I have no intention of recusing myself because I'm a Providence resident. And I have no financial interest in anything. I mean, I live in Providence just like anyone else.
Tyler, you live in the Vineyard though, don't you? That's currently built. You live in a hall right there.
Yes.
On the corner.
Yep.
That's just, Tyler, that's just very important that that's disclosed at the beginning of the meeting, because to maintain the integrity of the meeting.
Understood. We understand what you're saying. We're going to go ahead with Laura.
Laura Fisher. I wrote to you, I guess you may have read my letter. I would just like to say that as I understand the law, you and the city council are under no pressure to annex no pressure. And the notion or concept of property rights would come in after annexation, when, of course, if someone owns property here in Providence, they would have a right to develop it in a way that would be conforming with the ordinances and the zoning and so forth. You are under no pressure that I know of to annex this property. The people who spoke in favor of high density live here, so they're fine now, even though they had a lot of trouble getting their arrangements made. But we're not here to talk about the predicament of people who don't live here. And that would be the people who might be interested in buying a house or moving into an apartment here, what have you. And thirdly, as I mentioned in my letter, part of the, if there's a muddled issue, part of that has to do with the fact that 2 different city councils postponed the vote on the referendum for no reason that I have ever understood or heard of. So that the people, those of us who did collect signatures, worked very hard on it, were extremely frustrated with the city council. Hence, though we have a new council now, we don't necessarily know yet what to expect for them in terms of honoring the people who have property rights here and now versus honoring a possible future property right on the part of the would-be developer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Come on up.
Loretta Buckley, I've already signed in.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
have one quick alibi to the residents here that have spoken that currently live in Vineyard and are for the annexation. I would invite them to come over to the Providence Gateway to see these amenities that have been offered up. We have a swimming pool that is still not finished. It is maybe 30 feet by 15 feet. There are going to be over 200 homes in that development when it is totally finished out. You can't tell me that that little puddle of water is going to be enough for that number of children to come in. I am not a homeowner there. I will go on the record stating that I am a renter, but from the friends that I have that are homeowners, they have been paying for years for these amenities that are still not done. Now the clubhouse is open, but the rest of the stuff still isn't finished. So I'd really caution you for being for the annexation and high density housing when the follow through of promises and things to be built to support a community are not there. The infrastructure is just not in. So I wouldn't be counting your chickens before those eggs are hatched or even laid. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on back up.
I just had another question. So you've told the public that they are going to finish their amenities and you're going to hold them to that. Is that in their current property or is that contingent upon the property they want to annex?
Which property are we talking about?
Okay, so the current property of the vineyards.
Yep.
The residents that are part of the HOA were promised certain amenities when they bought their property there, correct? Correct? You have your HOA there, so you were promised certain amenities. You're going to make them finish their amenities, correct?
The law that I discussed, the statute that I discussed that we went and redid about 6 months ago begins when the statute, when the city council approved the statute.
Okay.
So anything forward of that has a new set of rules, new set of statutes that developers must follow. And it is much more, it's much more restrictive for them that they've got to finish things, amenities before they finish the property.
Okay, so my question was, because the residents were promised certain amenities when they bought their homes there.
Yep.
But those amenities probably haven't been finished.
That's correct.
So my question is, the promised amenities, are they going to be finished in the current property they own in Providence City? Or are they promising the amenities will be done only if they're annexed and the rest of the parcel is annexed into Providence.
Well, the annexation is for agricultural land, so there's no question.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, you do. You can ask questions, but we're not very good at answering. By the X up here.
My name is Ann Johns and I live in Providence. My question is this, because many of us who arrived here tonight were under a confused impression about what this meeting was going to do and what the current proposal is. I did not understand this was just about annexation. And you're separating that out from the classification, the zoning. I have a feeling that most of the residents in Providence would like to understand that. And if they did, they would be against annexation based on the vote that was taken on the proposition. How can we express that, or how could we get word out to Providence citizens that this is about annexation? You've divided it into 2 steps. Is there any way we can do that?
A company called Visionary Homes has divided it. Visionary Homes tried to develop this as an LCR zoning.
Well, it sounds like Providence City is going along with that. Both Scarlett and Ryan said they've divided it out.
They originally asked for an annexation and to have the zoning changed to lifestyle residential.
Yeah, I understand.
That went to referendum. That was put down by the people of the city, including.
So it's currently for annexation as agricultural land.
Now Visionary has come back.
Right.
And they're asking for.
I'm just asking, how can we get the word out to the voters that that is currently what's on the table so that you can get their viewpoint?
Well, we're doing pretty good here tonight. This is a pretty good turnout.
Do you know how many people live in Providence? Do you know how many people voted on that proposition?
Okay.
You know, this is a small, very small.
One of the things I was hoping to get from all of you folks tonight was, what do you feel that was wrong? What were the people saying when they said no to Prop 1? Were they saying we don't want high density? My friends have been telling me, no, I don't want high density. All of my friends, none of them are asking for high density.
Okay.
The other question I wanted to answer was, are people against the annexation, and why are they against the annexation?
Okay. If you're asking me personally.
No, I'm telling you, that's what I came to ask tonight. What do you feel?
Okay.
How do you feel?
So I was going to tell you. So I'm a voter. I would be against annexation based on the fact that it will lead to high density. So I think, as has been said, you can't separate those 2 issues. But I'm afraid that in separating, you've caused confusion. So if you really want people's real opinion about what you're looking at right now and considering, I'm just asking if there's a way that people could give you feedback bigger than this group. I was one of the people who gathered signatures and worked to
get Prop 1 on. Good.
Yeah.
And you know, 80% of the people in the city are happy that you did that.
Yes.
We voted against it.
I know. So I think that now, because it's been separated, people are really confused. They don't know what's going on.
Yep.
And those signs were posted on the property. Originally, it said single family high density. My husband and I walked, and suddenly there's a little white paper on them saying it's now for agricultural. And we were trying to figure out what is going on. I mean, that's just a blind. You know, we all know that it's going to be looked at for high density.
It's going to be something besides agriculture.
Right. So all I'm asking is, the only reason I came up was, because I've been involved in this process, I would be very willing to gather signatures against annexation. I mean, I would be willing to go around my neighborhood And if you and the city council are looking for input from Providence city voters, what's the process to do that? And I'd be glad to be involved.
Go ahead.
I'd like to maybe make a, the problem with a vote of yes or no only gives you a yes or no. If we can get a survey, and we're trying to build maybe more questions, more depth to that question, because the problem with a yes or no is that's all you have to say, okay, well, is it no on LCR, and well, is it yes on single family high, or is it, I mean, at that point, a survey rather than the mass signatures. And I would love to meet with you and understand your idea for some questions. I'd be happy to do it.
So could we take time to put together a survey?
I'd be happy to.
And I'd be happy to be involved in that as well. Let's get more input. Let's take the time we need to find out what people really think. Let's not just go at this assuming we know. So I don't think it's clear to most of us. So this has been really helpful for me. So
Give me a call. Give me a call.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just at Providence City offices. Okay.
And if anybody else has questions they'd like to submit for the survey, and it'd be great. I'd be willing to take those.
So can we put off the question of annexation long enough to get a survey?
Well, I know the council,
Comments,
I know the council won't take up this issue at least until their May meeting. So it's not going to be on the agenda until at least middle of May. So at least at that point, that they're not going to take a public hearing when they've got some off to training, and that they're going to make sure at least till May, probably until June, before they take up the issue, so that they can get a lot of that feedback. So this is a first step of many, but I think there's absolutely, I'd be happy to. And anybody else that would like to submit questions, I'd be happy to take them that way for a survey.
Laura Fisher, just as a detail, the last time most of us heard about a survey, it was the survey that we heard was done to find out whether the public wanted the fiber optics program or project. It turned out the survey was a survey sent only to the people who were on the city's email list for little bulletins. And I think it was 320 people. I'm not quite sure about the number. But those of us who were not surveyed did not view that as a survey. Thank you.
We're going to go until 10 minutes to 8, and we'll take the hands that keep getting raised here. First here, and then gentleman with blue cap next. The X there.
I will be quick.
Your name?
Sherry Crosby, and I live in Providence. I want to go down saying that I am against annexation as it currently is, because it will involve high density. And I am not pleased with the job the visionary has done in the Gateway subdivision. I own a townhome there, and my son lives there. And the previous lady that spoke is correct. There is no grass. There is dog poop all over the grass. The garbage cans are always overflowing. Our HOA was 165, it's now 245, and the amenities are not in. We've been paying for these amenities for 3.5 years. That's quite a long time. And I just am frustrated with the quality, the communication, and the feedback that I receive. So the only way that I would feel comfortable with this is if visionary presented a plan. Maybe we shouldn't be looking at high density housing. How about medium density? You know, maybe some larger lots and some homes that the traffic can handle and that both cities can be comfortable with. There are problems that need to be addressed before this land is annexed. Did you have a question for me?
I did. You had a lot of stuff to say, so
I did.
Got caught in the tail end of that. What does your HOA say about these problems? Aren't they the ones that?
Yeah, that's a whole different story.
Okay.
Because we called the HOA company and they passed the buck here and they passed the buck here. The HOA was to have been turned over to the owners, and it hasn't been yet. There are problems.
Okay. Thank you. Sir.
Brian Josh Paulson, City Council. How are you?
You gotta sign in.
Happy.
I know you. That's why we put you in. Thanks.
I appreciate you being here. I hadn't planned on saying anything because I think it's a public hearing. I'll get my opportunity to speak later, but there's just a couple important things. I think I'm here like you are, Tyler and Brian, Bob, just to listen, right? That's the idea of the public hearing. We've all done that before. So I admire you for how well you've done that. It's hard to do sometimes. I just want to say, I think the city's trying to kind of figure out this issue. I think Ryan's right. There's a yes or no vote, and it's really hard to figure out what that means. I think from the feedback tonight, I question whether or not we have the right process going with the citizens, that this is still kind of frightening to them.
There's another process?
I think so. We talked to the mayor previously about forming a by-city committee with some residents and planning commission members from River Heights, as well as some from Providence City, to sit either together with the developer and kind of try to work up a more concrete plan. And I think that dialogue would be really important to do. So I think we may just want to reconsider that idea, because I got to tell you, I was driving back from Salt Lake from work today, and I started listening to the meeting. I didn't get back in time. And when I heard that the annexation was for agricultural, I was in my car and I thought you made a mistake, actually, right as you were talking. I said, oh no, he's read that wrong. That's not what it is. And then I heard it again. I thought, oh, that's going to be super, super confusing. So I don't think there's any ill intent. I think there's just some miscommunication there with what the city's trying to do. And I think that's been really demonstrated by the citizens tonight. So it's for me, it's an opportunity to say, oops, I call it a notice, adjust, and evolve moment. I just notice what happened, I adjust, and I go ahead and evolve.
You rushed right over here to be with us. I appreciate that, Joe.
Yeah, you bet. So anyway, just maybe we have a correction that it's good that Joe's here, because I do think we potentially have as a city councilman, I wouldn't have known this as an issue unless someone brought this up during this meeting. I do think we have an important procedural issue here that we just need to be aware of. And I don't think I'd be doing my job as city council member if I didn't bring it forward, having known about it. In the city's bylaws for the commission, it does outline responsibilities of the chair and commission members regarding conflicts of interest. And there is a section in there, 4.2, which I think is worth reading. It's good that Joe's here, because I do believe, Tyler, you might want to read that carefully and consider whether or not there's a conflict of interest. I don't want anyone in the city to get in trouble with that. I can. I'll read it. You bet. And I just bring it because I want to make sure that this is by the book. Okay. So 4.2 reads, I need my reading glasses, but 4.2 reads, no member of the commission shall participate in any application which they have a financial or personal interest in the property or action concerned, or will be directly affected by the decision of the commission, or has or believe they have any conflict of interest as defined or regulated under the provisions of Utah State Code. No member of the staff of the commission or any, or of any agency serving the commission shall prepare or present arguments or reports or attempt to influence the decisions of the commission in any application which he or she has similar interests and which would constitute a violation of the above referenced Utah state statutes. I'm not an attorney, so you can interpret that. Joe is. Joe could maybe, Joe, you are, correct?
I'm a planning commission member.
It's not,
but he's also an attorney, so it's good.
Wait.
Yeah.
He is here as a planning commission member.
Okay.
He's got a private life.
Sure.
So do you, so do I, we all do. And it has nothing to do with attorney. It's great to have him here.
Great.
Okay.
I don't want to imply he makes a judgment. I just want Tyler to read that, because I think that could be interpreted that if amenities are going to be provided by voting on this with the property and you're a member of the homeowner association, which would be affiliated with that, I think there are people who would look at that as a conflict of interest. So I just want to bring that up. It's not my decision, it's Tyler's. Tyler can do it, but I don't feel like I'd be doing my responsibility if I didn't bring it to the fore, because there are responsibilities of the chair and of the commission. And Joe's here, he's a voting member, so there wouldn't be a lack of a vote because we don't have a quorum. So those are the issues. I think to summarize, I think I've heard that I think we kind of confused the citizens. I think we maybe got the wrong process going here. I don't think the city is up to no good. I think the developer is interested in working in their land. And number two, I think we just want to make sure that we're in accordance with the bylaws of the commission if we make a decision, so we're not caught in a situation where we have to backtrack from that. That's all I've got to share. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Point of personal privilege.
Yeah, go ahead.
Certainly will consult with some type of legal mind to validate that. I appreciate it. Like, I'm not here to just because I live in there. I feel like I personally can make an unbiased decision. It's absolutely, we want to be by the book. So we'll talk to the right people about that.
Okay, in the red.
Barbara Moon, and I've signed in before. Hi, Joe. I just am curious if you have listened to the 2 hours of public comment, because I think that's an important thing before taking a vote.
I have been at an HOA meeting representing someone at 7 o'clock and I got out of there. So I apologize for being here late. I have not been listening to the public comment.
Okay, I would just like to propose that the vote on annexation be delayed until you have a quorum that has heard all the concerns and has no potential conflict of interest.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're done. I would take one more if you really need to. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to close public hearing, item number 1 on the zoning and annexation of parcels 241 and 242. No votes are required. We're here to listen. Now, getting into legislative action. The next item, item number 2, is a recommendation, and I will read it to you. Providence City Planning Commission will review, discuss, and may take on making a recommendation to the City Council regarding the zoning of parcels 241 and 242.
Oh, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Make a
Scarlett,
clarification?
would you introduce yourself and tell these people where you sit inside of the city staff?
I'm Scarlett Bankhead, and my current title is Administrative Services Director. We're actually looking at some code amendments, so you'll probably see that change to community development in the near future. But part of my duties is, of course, is working with planning commissions and developers and citizens regarding land use issues. But this public hearing is to talk about the agricultural zone. This public hearing is not a recommendation on annexation. The City Council will hold the public hearing on annexation. The way it works in the general plan, when the city creates an annexation policy plan, at that point in time, there's a lot of work that goes into that plan. And we do hold public hearings, and we did hold public hearings, and we held open houses, and we did all kinds of things that the state code asked us to do, and we did that. This piece of property is already shown that it was in our annexation policy plan. So the council doesn't have to go back to the planning commission to ask again if we want to follow our own plan. But the zone that was in the annexation policy plan, or I mean in the general plan, excuse me, because the annexation policy plan doesn't deal with zones. It just deals with the property that the city is considering allowing to come into the city. In the general plan, under future zoning, this property was actually planned to continue what had been started as LCR. The way our city code reads, if somebody's coming in with an LCR, with a general plan request for the zone, then it doesn't have to come to the planning commission first. It just takes place in the public hearing with the city council, because the planning commission already weighed in and all of the going through the general plan and creating the future zoning map and everything. If it's coming into something different, then we want to go through the public hearing process and make sure that people, because they didn't get that opportunity to talk about the different zone back when the plan was done. So that's why we're here. This public hearing is to consider, should you recommend to the council if they choose to annex the property, should you recommend that they annex that property and assign an agricultural zone? Or should you recommend that they do something else? But it's not about the annexation. Tonight is not about the public hearing for the annexation. That public hearing will take place with the city council, and I don't remember the exact date.
I don't know that it's set.
Okay, so probably in the middle of May, but it will certainly be noticed the way it is according to state code. But no, your focus tonight is to recommend what if the city council, after holding their public hearing, chooses to go forward with the annexation, what zone they would like to have. And you don't have to recommend tonight. You can think about what has been said. You can go listen to the tape again. You can continue it. You can recommend. You can recommend that they consider it as agriculture. You can recommend they consider it as something else. Or you can recommend that they deny agriculture. You've got options, but the Providence City Annexation Policy Plan has already said that Providence would be willing to consider. Now, that doesn't mean that they will actually annex it, but to consider these parcels that are being proposed. So.
As what then? Consider it as
For annexation.
As agricultural or LCR?
Well, the general plan would say LCR, but since that was definitely voted down, they've come in with agricultural. And I guess after they come in with agricultural and they continue to do their studies and get their feedback and their market and all of that, I don't know what they will do. They can explain that themselves, but at some point in time, they will come back and ask, because agricultural would allow almost 20 acres, so 3.5 houses or something like that on it right now.
My concern is the general plan is what we're supposed to follow. And if it, and when you annex a piece of property and the city gets to designate its zoning at that time, it's one of the few times that they get to designate and accept the property in at a specific zoning. But if all we're doing is annexing it as agriculture and then apply the general plan and put it back to LCR in 2 or 3 steps, it seems to me where the voters voted that they don't want that they would rather not have it annexed in at all.
I don't
if
think
it's going to end up LCR.
I don't think
No, don't do that, please.
I don't think that the plan, that's why they're coming back for a zone different, and they will have to come back for a public hearing if they want a new zone. They can't just not have, they'd have to have a public hearing on a new zone.
But if the general plan suggests a zone, then usually we're bound to follow the general plan.
Not yet, not in the state of Utah. In the state of Utah, the general plan is still a guide. It is not ordinance. So I think it's important, though, to understand that you're not recommending whether or not this property is included in our annexation policy plan. You're recommending what on the zone that they've requested. That's what this one is about.
And I understand that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to talk anybody into any zone, other than I will say, I do think the council has heard the voice loud and clear on LCR. Now, part of the problem, and it sounds like there are people that are willing to give input and create surveys. Part of the problem was understanding, okay, we heard loud and clear that you don't want LCR, but when you say high density, what are you really thinking? And that's where we as staff and as a community, that's where we're trying to get to, is what were people really thinking? So that's all. I just needed to make clear that you're not holding the public hearing on the annexation. You're holding the public hearing on the zoning designation.
Thank you very much.
Ryan, did you get any messages in?
Did anybody send any messages to you, Ryan?
Checked- Yeah, I checked that before I came in here at 6 o'clock. We had no emails.
Thank
I
you.
checked spam, junk.
I just want to do some, I just Scarlett's backup singer, if that's okay. I don't want to, I think it's important, Brian, if you allow it.
As a city councilman, please
Thank you.
come forward.
I've been listening to the public there. Scarlett is absolutely right. There are two different public hearings. There's an annexation, there's a zone assignment, and they're two different processes. And I think there's been some confusing narrative here regarding that tonight, regarding annexation, but that does happen that way. If they don't believe you, I want them to know that that's the way it works. I know that that's the way it works. And if you read the agenda and the zone request, it is clear that that's what's being done tonight. It's a zone assignment and the annexation. So just if you wanted to hear from somebody else, that's Scarlett's. So it's very, very accurate with regarding that. And just Joe, a point on the general plan, and Scarlett would back me up on this. When we worked on the general plan, I was on the planning commission. This parcel was under referendum at the time. And the planning, Bob might have been here too. The planning commission did not know what to do on the general plan with that parcel because it was under referendum. So if you go to the general plan and look at it, it is marked LCR, but it has hash lines through it. And if you go back and listen to the minutes, that's very important. It was intentional. We did not want it to look like identical to another LCR component because we didn't know what to do with it. It was a limbo parcel. We didn't know how to treat it. So it was marked LCR and there were hash lines through it. So I think there was ambiguity at the time of creating the general plan, what it would be. And it's very important history that you know that. You can go back, Scarlett can pull the meeting minutes when we had that discussion, but that parcel was under referendum and we didn't know how it should be zoned. Scarlett, will you back me up on that?
Yep, we had a lot of discussion about that, and that's ultimately what they felt like was, because it is a guideline, they stayed consistent. They did know that whatever the vote came out at, then that would give them a better idea of what the public wanted.
So I do apologize for extra comment, but I think that directly addresses your concern.
It does.
So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Is there a problem with the road widths, Mr. Ryan, in the current vineyard subdivision, LCR?
I probably have to declare a conflict. I am a road person and I come from a road background. I spent 10 years in heavy highway construction. The wider the road, the better for me, but that is my conflict. So I will admit my conflict is I like wider roads, better asphalt. So having spent much of my career in heavy highway construction, my answer is going to be I like wider roads, but the ordinance would allow the size of road that it was, but you will get my conflict of coming from a road construction background.
Is there a 21-foot wide road out there in the vineyard?
I believe that is the accurate. I don't argue the accuracy of what that width is. I don't argue that. Now there is two different ones. There's a public road that enters, which is wider, and the side streets, which are private, are narrower, and private roads can be allowed to go that narrow in Providence.
Obviously, the fire marshal, fire department approved those private roads.
As has been mentioned, it requires 18 to 20 feet for a fire truck to go down a road. Parking should not be allowed, and I would assume that parking was not allowed in its approval. I guess that. So
There's no signs to prevent it.
as a private road, the owner of the private road should notice that.
The way that they're doing it right now, and don't take it that I'm happy with this, is if someone parks on the sidewalk, so to speak, or in the road, then they ask us as residents to call the HOA, and then they will fine the offender. I've done that for neighbors because I definitely have the same concern. I don't like people parking on the road, and if they can either park in the driveway, like cars, if you live in the house, you're supposed to park in your garage. I think there's something in statutes that says garages are meant for parking vehicles. They're not meant for storage. And then driveways are also additional parking spaces. And that's the current remedy for this particular neighborhood, is to call the HOA if you see a violation. And I've done that. I've seen them take action sometimes, not every time. That's a problem that we have to take up with our HOA. And I would favor signs. I think signs would be a great idea to say there's no parking, but just for a little more context and clarity around the actual situation.
Thanks. Bob, I'm going to ask you a question. Because somebody, because an owner of a piece of property asked for agricultural land, agricultural zoning, that limits them, like we just spoke of, 3.5, and this parcel will be 3.5 homes, 3 homes will be allowed there. That's what your understanding is. That's what it is. Yeah. So Visionary Homes is asking for agricultural land. If they were asking for LCR, go ahead. I mean, we haven't got this straight yet tonight.
Sorry,
So
sometimes I don't do my math right.
Yeah.
Apparently those two properties together equal this over 20 acres instead of just under 20 acres. So it's 1 home per 5 acres, so they could have 4.
4 homes. Okay.
Just to make sure you don't shoot me later.
So if we approve the agriculture, we're approving that Visionary could build 4 homes on that property. Now, everybody's been assuming, and I'm not sure I can argue with anybody, but the public has assumed that because that Visionary is not giving us the truth. Wait a minute, we haven't got we need the lawyer to get up here. Save my bacon. Yeah, you better. We're listening. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, my name is Craig Winder, and I'm General Counsel for Visionary Homes. I really appreciate the clarification that Scarlett made. Because we are not going to go for the LCR zone, we had to have this meeting tonight. Believe it or not, Visionary Homes is aware of the vote that took place in November. And we're aware that the LCR zone is not something that the citizens of Providence want. We know that. And that was the entire reason for us to have this meeting. Because the LCR is the zoning designation in the general plan, and we're going against that, that's why we had to have this procedurally. This was a procedural requirement. This is not an attempt by Visionary Homes to confuse people. It is not an attempt to use smoke and mirrors or do anything underhanded. There will be a public hearing before the City Council on the issue of annexation. And at that City Council, because we will be asking for an agricultural zone, that will also be before the City Council. So please understand, we are not trying to present ourselves as having a new interest in agriculture. We don't. That's not our purpose. I have an interest in agriculture. I think it's fascinating, but this particular property, we do not have agricultural intentions for that, and we are not trying to convince anyone otherwise. Okay, we intend to develop this property into residential housing. It will not be LCR. We will be applying, assuming we can obtain annexation. That's step 1. Okay, step 2 is going to be where we apply for a rezone. Now, there is a specific procedure by which we go through that. with respect to a rezone, and I need to address some of the comments suggesting that if the city annexes, then there's absolutely no way we're not going to have some kind of an ugly high density development. When it comes to rezone, the city has broad discretion as to whether to grant that rezone. And quite frankly, a developer will almost never object to the city's decision because the standard of review in the court system is so high. The developer would have to establish that the city acted in a way that was arbitrary and capricious. That never happens. In a legislative mode, and a zoning decision is a legislative question. Legislative questions are granted broad desires. Courts almost never touch them. Okay, so to suggest that the city is not going to have another bite at the apple if they grant an annexation is absolutely untrue. What is true is we do not know if the citizens would have objected to an annexation had the zoning request been, for example, 1 acre lots. I'm guessing that wouldn't have been referendum, or half-acre lots, or quarter-acre lots. That's speculation on my part, but we don't know, okay? So we are actually grateful that we can have just one question before this board tonight, before this commission. And the question is this: are you comfortable recommending an agricultural zoning designation to the city to take up in its annexation hearing in the month? It will probably be in the month of May. That's the one question before this group. And this has gone through the annexation question itself. I mean, ultimately that will be for the city council to decide, but the city has accepted our petition. The county invited objections. They listened to those objections. Those who did vote voted in favor. There was an abstention, as was noted. But I know that I'm talking to the people behind me. I know that. But there is so much discussion to be had. And I can promise them that that discussion will be had according to the procedures that the city has set out. And I want to give them some reassurance that we know a couple of things. Again, the city has broad discretion as to what zoning designation they will allow. And I can promise you that the city will have in mind that 80% of the voters had a real problem with high density. We know that. Number two, we also know how painful it was for us as Visionary Homes to wait for 2 years for that referendum to be decided. We don't want to do that dance again. So please understand, we're trying to be responsive. That is what we're trying to do. This represents us going back to the lab because what we tried before wasn't accepted. We get that. There is a procedure, and we're simply trying to follow that procedure. There will be plenty of opportunity for public comment, not only with respect to annexation, but if we clear that hurdle for a rezone, there will be a public hearing. The City Council and the Planning Commission will hear those voices. And we are going to have to respond as the developers because we know that we can't just ram this through, not on a rezone. A rezone is a legislative question. And because of that, the City Council has broad discretion. I just want to emphasize that. There is a lot of discussion to be had, and we will have it, hopefully. Any questions for me?
No, but you're going to come back often, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what we need.
All right.
What about the questions that you said you would answer?
I didn't say that I would answer your question. Okay. This hearing is for one thing only, and that's with respect.
If you'll come to the mic.
To the mic.
Okay, sorry. And I apologize. I'm not turning my back to you because I'm trying to be rude. I'm actually supposed to address this. So I will emphasize again, there have been a lot of questions here tonight. Okay. Those questions can be answered in the process, during the process, right? There's a procedure that's laid out. This is about an agricultural, a recommendation to rezone it, or to zone it rather, to agricultural. What that allows us to do is focus on one thing at a time. What we're trying to do is currently focus on annexation. After that, there will be a rezone request. We all know that. We're not trying to hide that. And it's during that rezone request that I think we can answer some of these other questions that are more specific to what our plans are. Thank you.
Thank you. I like the idea of recommending that we we go to an agriculture zone so that we can have a hearing in the future and decide what zoning is going to be best long term. Right now, it's the plan, general plan says it's going to be LCR. And we can't send LCR to the city council, but we can send agriculture to the city council. I'm not going to take any comments from the public. I'm sorry.
We closed the
public hearing has been closed. We're in let's
thank you.
Any other concerns from the commission? Staff, we've covered everything so far. Nothing that's hanging in the wind.
I had one.
Okay.
I don't know if it can be answered. Yes, please. The geotechnical investigation, are you able to answer any questions on?
I cannot. Let me ask one of my colleagues.
You okay? Going to the
Thanks for coming.
Going to the section 3.6 liquefaction evaluation. This popped out at me. I see that 3 holes that were tested. The information was missing, and then we had 5 more that were blank. I don't know if you can explain what happened there, or is that normal? Or I'm on page 4.
Right, I'm with you. No, I honestly can't answer to that. When he goes out there and does his borings, some information he's able to attain from the borings and some he's not.
Why is that?
Okay, John, let me. I'm going to defer to Dallas.
Sure.
He knows a bit more.
Thank
about
you.
I'm Dallas.
Did you get the question?
I did. I heard it. Yes, Dallas Nickel with Visionary. So I don't have that paper sitting in front of me, but if you look at it, there's a series of borings and holes they dug, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I remember right, they made Swiss cheese of that piece. And they don't, for liquefaction specifically, they don't test for that in every single hole. In fact, I think they may have only tested that in 2 or 3 holes. Didn't you say that there was data? There was data shown for liquefaction on a couple
or I think B is for bore. Bore 1, 2, and 3. I've got on the right hand side. If you look at we've got the chart there. It says missing, and then as we go down, we have 5 empty spots. So I'm just wondering.
So here's what I can tell you is liquefaction is something that they don't test on every single hole. When they do different holes in different areas, they're looking for different things. What I can tell you is we've had this geotech out. He's a local guy. He's an expert. He's been out, and the recommendation was that liquefaction was not a concern. Now, I'm not a geotechnical engineer. I am a professional engineer, but I don't specialize in geotech. But I can tell you that there's enough data there for him to have a comfort level that liquefaction is not an issue. Why he says missing data, I can't address that specifically, but.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
Let me just make a comment if I could, because I think Mrs. Moon's comment to me is probably a prudent comment. I'm left with a position where I'm either abstain because I haven't listened to the entire public, or I'd vote no on it, or I'd make a motion to defer action to the next meeting. And as painful as it will be to listen to the public comment on audio, I would make a commitment to do that, to be educated. So, that's, I just want the three of you to know where I'm sitting at on that.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I would also abstain until we can get further input, because I do want to, be by the rules of the book. And so I won't make any further comment other than to say that if he abstains and I abstain, you don't have a quorum and have to postpone it anyway.
Well,
You want to make a motion in town?
can we make a motion without a?
Well, I can make a motion to postpone the issue so we can seek input on conflict of interest. Or Joe could.
I'd make a motion to defer it to the next meeting, to allow Tyler to get some input on it and to allow me to painfully listen to the public comment.
I'll second that.
Yeah. All in favor of Joe going through the painful process? No, go ahead, Joe. I think that's great. I would go for that. Can we postpone it? You get some feedback on it. You get some ideas on what we talk about. I can't even say the word. So yeah, you want to make a motion?
I thought I just did.
And I second.
Get that, Tyler? Okay, here comes the vote. Okay. The motion has been made and seconded that we table it. Is that what you said? We move it on to the next meeting.
Table and defer it to the next
Table and defer to the next meeting. Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Not paying attention.
That's a question.
Probably not. Go ahead.
I'm just looking at a time frame. So the 27th, Tyler and I, well, no, I will be gone. Do you want that meeting on the 27th or the 11th? The 27th of April or the 11th of May, just to make sure you don't always have the second one in a month. So you want to wait till May?
Anybody against having it in April? Let's go ahead and have it in April.
Okay, thanks.
Carla.
May I hijack your meeting just for 1 second? Actually, it's going to be 2 minutes.
Okay.
I appreciate, and again, I'm like Craig, I don't like speaking with my back to the audience, but that's the appropriate way to do this. I appreciate all these comments that I've sat and listened to. However, I would encourage everyone that talked tonight to get a hold of their state representative, because they're going to be very frustrated with me in a few months when I come forward following state code with a moderate income housing plan that will have options that people will not like. Our city doesn't have a choice. We have to follow the code, the state code, and the state code says that by October 1st, we have to have a plan in place. And so
You're talking about an affordable.
I'm talking about redoing our moderate income housing plan. And we will present some ideas that would not be popular with this group. And I totally get that. And I totally understand that. But the people that they need to talk to are the people that are telling me and putting it in writing in the state code that this is what the city needs to do. So
I'm thinking, if you're seeking my comment, it is true that there needs to be a plan. It is not true that that plan needs to involve this property.
no, it doesn't involve this property. That plan involves the whole city. That is moderate income housing plan for our entire city. And I'm just telling them now that it's not that I'm ignoring their comments. It's not that Ryan's ignoring them or anybody else, but the state is very serious on wanting to provide for people moderate incomes and lower. And they have asked us to do a plan. Now, we could decide not to do it, but then we face penalties. They can withhold certain funds, things like that. So, yes. And so I just want people to know, I totally appreciate their comments, but the people that really need to hear this are the state legislators, and they just barely got done. I wish our whole contingency that put together all of that referendum material would have went down and listened to some of what went on in the state legislature. That's just my 2 minutes of time. Is I would love to look like I'm being responsive to these folks. In my heart, I understand where they're coming from, but in my job, I also have to follow the state code. And so we will be presenting a plan in a few months after we get the appropriate data from the Division of Workforce Services to put a plan together that does talk about what are the things that Providence can do to help encourage areas for a moderate income housing. So it's not that I've ignored these people. It's just that I'm doing what the state code says.
Thank you. There is a process. I want to address the public here for a second. There is a process. There's a process for everything. In this case, we're talking about process of zoning, a process where we would love to have a commitment by the developer, what their plans are, to sign it and to back it and bond it so that it's going to happen. It doesn't work that way. It never has, and it never will. We can't take that right away from them. What we can do is we can follow the statutes, rezone as requests come in. Do we lean towards high density or low density? That's not a point that we can address. Visionary Homes is very, very aware of the city and when I say the city, I mean the people that are here, the people that live here in the city of Providence. Very aware of the city and the people involved in the city. They want to provide homes in this area. That's the business that they're in. I'm grateful for companies like that are willing to provide homes. The process that they've chosen is that they would like to get this through. That is, they would like it to be agricultural land. And Mr. Winder has been upfront with us and he's told us that as soon as it's agricultural land, if that can go through, the annex takes place, that they will come for a rezone. And at that point, I expect you each to be here and to bring more people if you want. That is when we talk about the density of the buildings that can go onto that property. And then we get into the platting process and the road size and the like. We can have a lot of discussion there. That makes a big difference. Today, they wanted agriculture. I can't, we're not voting, but I can't say no. They wanted agriculture, fine. They're going to put 4 houses on the property. It's not high density. We're not talking high density. If they want high density, they're going to have to come before you. They're going to have to come before us. I have my personal feelings, and I'm not here to share them with you. But if the people don't want high density, and that's one thing I took from the referendum, then the people won't get high density. If it's this particular parcel or if it's everything here on Gateway, whatever. If you don't want it, fine, because there's going to be a zoning There's probably going to be a zoning, highly likely that there's going to be a zoning meeting and there'll be a public hearing, just like we've had tonight. And we can talk about the zoning and what they've requested. At that point, the commission will decide what to recommend to the council. It's a ways off, but it tonight has nothing to do with, in my opinion, the meeting tonight or the request tonight on the rezone has nothing to do with density at all. The density will come before the public, and we will have a nice discussion then too. I appreciate y'all being here tonight. If there's not anything else that needs to be brought up, then we'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and look for a motion since Rowan's not here.
Let me
Go
make
ahead.
one additional comment. The emphasis on what you said was recommendation. This body makes a recommendation. That means the city council can accept the recommendation or reject the recommendation. All we are doing is making a recommendation. So you need to understand the ultimate decision is going to be made by the city council. And I apologize for being late. I had a working conflict.
Thank you for being here tonight, Joe and Tyler. Bob.
We have 2 more agenda items, you realize.
No, I didn't.
So if you're trying to close the meeting, there are other people here that would like to get their agenda item taken care of too. So I just want you to know there are 2 more agenda items to go. We're just getting warmed up. We've got 2 down, 2 more to go. As they leave, I would recommend talking to your legislators. There is a lot of push from the state legislature to take away the rights of the city.
I'll look and see what I can find.
Okay, we've got a next item on the agenda is an administrative action. We're here to review, discuss, and maybe take action on a request for a final plat for South Bench Estates, located 1039 South, 400 East in Providence. Scarlett, would you like to go ahead and address us and bring us up?
I need to declare conflict. So yes, I would
Is
like
this
to
yours?
take a minute
Is this yours?
and turn the time over to Ryan. But yes, this is my personal property that I've delayed as long as I could because my son's finally old and won't let me delay any longer. So anyway.
Thank you, Scarlett. We'll
All right.
we'll get it.
I'm better reading from here, so I'm going to try to read it. But if you just give a minute or 2, I think there's some clearing out and noise, and I wanted to give it its time, if that's okay. Yeah, but we're still a public meeting. I didn't want them to feel like they couldn't come back.
We can't rush them. Can't rush them out.
So I'm sorry. I hope that's okay.
Josh, do you want to? Somebody left.
Coming back, their car keys are there, so they'll be right back.
Okay.
Should put treats downstairs to encourage them to keep walking.
All right, I will try to read from there if you'll let me. I don't have them as memorized point to point as Scarlett does so eloquently. So I'm going to take it. This has been prepared, the staff report, because of Scarlett's involvement. The staff report is prepared by Diane and the other staff, so that we have some separation. This is hers. It has gone as a preliminary plat. It has come. The preliminary plat was approved, and this is the final plat. I have it up here. There is a number of items. The findings of fact, we go through the discussion of each of the different plans. We do try to make sure that each of the plans and the framework of those plans are addressed. We've looked at the general plan. We've looked at the master plan of the park, trail, and recreation, the transportation master plan, talked about the water requirements. we go through each of the different items and review the final plat, the construction drawings, the development, addressed. Each of those items have been addressed. There is no outstanding items to be addressed at this point. Our conclusions, we do have a few things in the conclusions, but we have reviewed, and it's in line with the general plan and the master plans. The water calculations still need to be revised to include some things there, and the conditions. The applicant has met the items required. They'll address the water calculation, and just because you approve it, if you make any mistake, we always conclude with a CYA that if we approve something that doesn't follow the laws, it is not approved, because we can't approve anything that violates the federal, state, or county or city laws. And so at that point, we don't admit fault to making any mistakes. The mistake, if made, has to be on the part of the one developing, because they should know that development. And if in our care to make the best of decisions, we don't have the ability to do something that would violate the federal or state or county laws. So so at that point, I think everything's in order for it to come before before this body to complete the final plat, to have this move to the next step of construction. But this would be your last step to have this. So if there's any questions, the applicant is here, and they can take questions if you have those.
Staff, do we have any plan map?
We did on the it didn't get posted on this one, so we have been here.
I did submit it.
I know it's been submitted. I don't know why it's not on this one. So where we had other staff preparing, it probably didn't get submitted to Tyler like it probably was, but that would be on us. So
By quickly glancing over the application, I didn't see anything on any issues on the slope. Is that
the
correct?
applicant?
There's no slope issues at all in this.
Not for the division, but there is slope on the back of the property.
And is there building issues?
No, the building will follow the city code for, there is definitely 30% or greater slope on the west end of the property. But where the new home is going to go, it will have to follow the city code. So they're very much aware that they can't disturb that part of the property. So we'll follow the city code on that. And we will correct the water calculations so that they are in line, and anything else that the city needs us to do that our engineer might have not done, we'll do.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Questions, concerns? It would be nice to have a map, but I don't think it's going to be required tonight. I don't have to have one.
I can go get. I can go.
I'm almost there. I'm almost there. Just
preliminary.
No, it's final plat. This is what was submitted with the final plat application. So it was submitted. It is here. There is the slope in the back indicated. So
That's the grade.
that's the hashed gray area.
So the buildable areas, what are the buildable areas on the north and on the south lots?
The north is built, the south, you can see it through the dotted.
So it's
This part right here is for detention.
This
square. Okay. And the existing home is on the north, correct?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. And what is in the middle? there, the blank spot on the road?
This one here, that is a piece that has been carved out. It was already subdivided before. So it's not part of the
No
subdivision.
ownership at all on your part?
Not mine.
Okay.
Terrace.
Related party.
The lots up there are other people's property. These, the three that are up there, but
Yes.
that's other.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the ones going down.
First houses on those already.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Any concerns, questions? Motions?
Make a motion that we approve the final plat on Providence parcel ID 02-115-0053 to include the findings of fact, the conclusions of law and conditions.
Second that motion.
And motion, do we accept, we recommend this to the city council? It's been seconded. I'm sorry, Bob Perry did the motion. Tyler Riggs seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Tyler. Any opposed?
No, just confirm, this doesn't go to council.
Right. It's approved.
Oh, it's approved. It's,
Yeah.
we're administrative on that. Okay. Well, we got the vote.
Yes.
Okay. We're not going to be forgiven for a while. Ignoring me formally. Okay. Let's leave on to the last item. We've got a study item here on the retaining wall code amendment. And review, discuss, request, change the retaining wall code amendment that was been brought before us by Brett and Idina Ward. Joe, you were here last meeting, correct?
Right.
So we're all familiar with the discussion that went on.
Yeah.
Okay. I have not had a chance to go over these other city codes on walls, retaining walls. Anybody want to share their opinion on those other the codes from the other cities?
I don't think Brett or Mr. or Mrs. Ward is here.
I am.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, sorry.
Could you step up, please?
Sure. I am Idina Ward.
What have you heard from the neighbors? We were at, I guess that was our last discussion.
They've actually been out of town. We haven't
Oh,
had an
okay.
opportunity to speak. Or at least it seems like they're out of town. So,
That was my question. Whether
Oh,
they had made any contact with neighbors or have you come up with any other ideas?
we're still pursuing all of those lovely ideas that we have, but like up at 2 a.m. with an idea. So we're still thinking of different things like that. But I did look at the other city retaining wall codes, and thank you, by the way, for whoever did the research for that. That was excellent. Thank you. I was having a hard time finding city.
Gotta give
codes.
St. George credit to Tyler, but I got the others for you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So when I was looking at them, St. George is the most liberal one with that one. They have basically anything 8 feet and below is okay. The North Logan is the most common to, or similar to what it is right now. What I did notice when I was looking through them before the meeting is that I didn't notice anything, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't notice any that mentioned which way the wall was facing. None of that language was in any of these city codes. And so it didn't, I thought that was bared noting that other cities don't necessarily have that facing language in there anymore. And there was something else that I was going to mention about it.
Average height.
Oh, yes. Many of them had 6 feet. A few of them had, there was one that was confusing to me. I think it was Mill Creek, where it talked about if it wasn't in the front, some sort of front zone. Do you know what I'm referring to? I think it was in Mill Creek. That I wanted clarification on what that actually meant.
Just like we've designated sensitive area zones, Mill Creek is obviously designated a foothill zone and a canyon overlay zone that have slopes that are greater than 30%. And so they've got some requirements specific to those zones. So that's what that zone means.
We're not close to 30%.
I actually have no idea.
Not on Idina's property, but we do have many properties, as you just saw, that have 30% slope or greater. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Personally, don't like the idea of grandfathering anybody in. We had a discussion a month ago where there was, we were talking about spot zoning.
I actually, sorry.
Come on back, I do.
So sorry. After a discussion, we have decided it would be okay if we removed the thing for it to be retroactive. When we were looking over the contract, it seems like it will still work.
Okay. If you don't want to be retroactive, you're going to have to take care of it under the current statutes. You know that. Better come back up.
The contract as we read it, that it says as long as it meets current code, then we are okay. So as of the time of this, oh, I'm sorry, let me get my thoughts right. So when the whole issue is resolved, if the code is changed, then it will meet current code.
Oh, so if we change the code, you're willing to change the wall to the current code? No. What I'm saying is retroactive or grandfathering your wall in to the new code is not normal. That's something that all by itself is kind of
right, and that was clear with the last meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
So that if we don't do that, then it doesn't really satisfy your problem, doesn't rectify your problem. The problem that you've got now is that it's out of code, right? And it got put up, the code's not right, you need to modify it to put it back together. Is that what we're talking about, staff? We're talking about a zone, or we're talking about an amendment or a change in the statute.
I might recommend that you figure out whether you want to have the code changed. If the code is, I'm a eat the elephant one bite at a time and try to get one part done. That's kind of how I work, and I apologize for that. But eating the elephant would tell me, is the code anything you want to change? If you don't want to change the code, then the discussion of retroactive or not is moot. Yeah, mute. Well, I don't, anyway. But that's kind of my question.
So I don't like the idea of it being retroactive at all. I don't think we should do that on any law. We can help it, any statute. And I can't see a reason to change it. This is the first request we've had to change the code on retaining walls. We don't have a lot of people beating down the wall to change retaining walls code. So that's my feelings. Tyler, you want to say anything about retaining walls?
I really liked, well, what initially spurred my interest in seeing some of the others. St. George had the 8, but then the Mill Creek, which Scarlett brought up, I think is worth considering having something different for areas of high slope, because and I'm talking going forward in the future. I'm not speaking specifically regarding the wards, the wall, but I think that it would be worth whoever is responsible considering having special provisions for areas with greater slope if we are going to continue developing areas with greater slope. And so they have a special provision for the greater heights in areas that have those conditions. One thing that I would also be interested in looking up, I think there's in the Mill Creek Code, it calls out that residential properties that are not in the foothills and canyons overlay zone. I'm curious there's no definition of that. I'm curious to do a little more research and understand what they consider the foothills and canyons overlay zone, and what that entails, and what retaining wall rights someone who lives in whatever those zones are enjoy. Because the retaining walls code that was shared with us talks about residential properties that are not in the foothills and canyons overlay zone and that have slopes that are greater than 30% are eligible for an exemption to the above requirements. ... It allows retaining walls up to 16 feet in height. So I would just be curious, in sense of knowledge, what that definition of that special zone means and whether there's anything interesting for the city of Providence. Those were my only thoughts. There's some interesting things out there and alternatives than just having a one size fits all for the entire city.
Would and this is speculation, in the canyon overlay zones, are they more prohibitive on the retaining wall, or are they more liberal? I would think they'd be more prohibitive.
I honestly don't know, but I will certainly reach out to the Mill Creek city and talk to their planners or their zoning people and have them get me some additional information on them.
I ran away without my computer that I normally bring. What is our maximum height right now? 6 feet?
Well, it's a little interesting. Depends on which way the wall faces. If it's the maximum height is 6 feet in a setback, if the exposed side of the wall faces the property owner.
Frank Plummett's property. You're familiar with it?
Mm-hmm.
On Center Street. Someone owns the lot to the east of him. Before the road was put in, that used to be the drainage area through there, going down to Spears' house. It drops in elevation pretty rapidly. And when I purchased that lot, I was lucky enough to get all the excess fill, but my wife purchased the lot and I need to make sure she owns it.
I was gonna say, I think that's your wife's, but
Yeah, I purchased it, she owns it. But there's nothing new in that. Basically, I was able to get excess fill from the sewer project delivered to it to raise the hole that was in it. But I still have about an 8-foot drop off on the west side along on the east border of Frank Furman's. And since you brought this up, I mean, I'm not planning on doing this, but I've always related to a problem if I can relate it to something I'm involved in because I understand it more. So on that, if Frank has a fence up right now, and I would have to put the retaining wall if I built one on the side of the fence, he would never see that. But it would still not be legal if I went over 6 foot.
the way the code is, that's right.
Even though he put up a fence and would never see it, he'd just see his side of the fence. Okay.
You think the code needs to be changed?
No, I'm not on me.
Well, not personally, but
yeah.
you know, that idea.
Well, I think what Tyler was getting at is if there is slope on the property that you're trying to make usable, that you try and give exemptions to property inside of it, you know, with it. I don't know that the code needs to be changed, but I think we are starting to build up on the foothills, and we need to have a practical ordinance. I would actually like to get a group of people about the size of what's here and get a feel from the city residents as to what they want, rather than just react to my problem or her problem. Okay, try and get a consensus.
And if I may, I mean, since some of our neighbors are learning about what's going on with our lot, and so we've heard from some people, and there are other people just around us who would also like to see different things with retaining. I think we mentioned last week, one of our neighbors is trying to fix his current retaining wall and he can't fix it because it's not up to current code, things like that. And so I know that there are other people around there who do have issues with retaining wall, they current code.
The question is what code would work for everybody.
That
I
is
noticed one of the things on Grandview is that some of the houses, they built them way down below street level. They didn't bother to backfill it and then build on top of it like you guys did. And obviously the way you guys built it was, to me, it's comfortable. You know, that you walk up to the home, use the front door, and park right there. Those other homes, some of those driveways are rather gnarly to get down to them. And it's almost like, should we have code to tell people they need to all build on the same elevation within reason? I don't know.
And that is something else too, is that most of the houses do have the backfill so that, because the lots originally, there's a steep slope at the beginning and then a more gradual slope toward the end of the lot. And so most of them built up higher and backfilled in the front. But the one right next to us, the south of us, that has the retaining wall on it, they did build in the, like, they have quite the gnarly driveway. And so it does make it like that's also a difference. When I look at the other backyards that are built on similar, what am I thinking of? The similar elevation, thank you, similar elevation. I mean, obviously their backyards are also similar elevations. And so that's also some of the difference.
Okay.
Question.
Go ahead, Howard. You got to come up to them. Howard Christensen.
Can I ask her what's wrong with her?
Howard
Christensen. I need that may be me, but what's wrong with her current wall?
It's out of code. She just built it and it's out of code.
She just built it.
She didn't. She hired people to build it.
Oh,
They
well,
made
she had it
mistakes.
built.
They made some mistakes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's out of the existing code.
That's correct.
Okay.
Howard will give me a full dissertation later on this topic. I'll think about it. So, is the retaining wall issue something we need to address? Do we need to just push this aside and say retaining walls code is fine the way it is? Joe, you sound like you want to go ahead and look at the retaining wall code some more.
I would support Joe's idea of, I don't know, like a committee or something. Just it's an interesting idea that is there something that would be a better fit for the future of the city, just to get citizen input and resident input, things like that.
Does the city have the ability? Does the city have the ability to put in a newsletter or something that you know the planning commission would like to have an idea on this? Would you please log on to this website and give your opinion on the retaining wall height limitations as we're starting to go up the hillside?
I'll offer comments to that. First, I think the next step for you with this would be a public hearing, because you haven't held one. So you would still, once you have the code, if you want to revise code, then you'd have that as a public input mechanism. And secondly, if you want to come up with questions, we have an email group of a lot of the residents and that we've compiled. It's not all inclusive. We could include into the newsletter, but if you have questions and want to build a survey, I realize surveys are not all inclusive and they're not statistically sampled, but we could certainly do something. The question would be is if you would be willing to draft those questions and get to that point if that's what you want. Obviously, it's not, you don't want to necessarily take action on it, but it does give you input from a variety of sources that want to share. So anyway, those are two. I'm happy to try to help however, Joe.
Helping out on this would be helpful unless we have a specific language to refer to. Just having a public hearing on it in general would just, I think, be a,
Only the public hearing is required for a code change at that point. So, I mean, it's gonna happen. You can have more feedback or whatever. I'm not trying to discount that. I'm just saying that is one procedural step that you'll still is part of the process.
If we want to go ahead.
If you want to go ahead, that is true.
Did we rule out conditional use at last meeting?
that's, the conditional use goes to the administrative body, not this body.
You would have to change the code. That would be a permitted use, and then you would have to put it in as a conditional use as that item. So the code would still have to be changed. If that's the code you want to change, it's different than what she's proposing, but you certainly could go down a different rabbit hole if you so choose. But it would still be a code change. You can't push, because it's not currently a conditional use, you can't push it over there.
What would the staff, talking to staff, what would be your recommendation if we looked at a change in the language to allow the conditional use? Would that create a problem on conditions that you have, or do you think the administrative body could put conditions that would mitigate it? And I know I'm asking you to get into a crystal ball, but I don't know. I don't know what you do with those bodies.
We have some guidelines in our current code that we can consider for mitigation strategies. And it's going to take me a minute. Okay, so our standards, this is coming from Providence City Code 1035, and a conditional use permit shall be approved if reasonable conditions can be imposed to mitigate the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of the proposed use in accordance with the following standards. To mitigate the effects of the proposed use on the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing, working, or conducting business in the area. To mitigate injury to property in the vicinity. To mitigate any risk to safety of persons of property because of vehicular traffic or parking, large gatherings of people, or other causes. To mitigate unreasonable interference with the lawful use of the surrounding property. To mitigate the need for essential municipal services which cannot reasonably be met. To mitigate the exposure of minors to activities appropriately restricted to adults, and to better conform the proposed use to the principles and objectives of the zoning regulations and the general plan. So that's kind of our framework that we look at when we start looking at conditions that we can impose. So I personally am not a fan of conditional use, even though I used to be, and a long time ago they treated conditional uses differently. But a conditional use is a permitted use. It comes down to it. We might say, well, you have to terrace this, or we might say certain things like that for safety reasons. But when it comes to retaining walls, we actually talked about that as staff when this problem first came up. And they can be engineered to be extremely high and be safe. So some of these conditions, when it comes to engineering a structure, are a little bit difficult for us to overcome, because an engineer will say, yeah, that 15-foot wall is safe. Does that mean we want 15-foot walls in our next door neighbor's yard? I don't know. Maybe.
And the statute of limitations on the engineer is 4 years. So.
Yeah. So that's, you know, I mean, those are some of the things that we have to look at. So if you did want it to be as conditional use, I would still think you would want to put certain requirements within the code that we could maybe add some conditions to or something, but you've got to at least bare bone what you're willing to live with. So that when it comes down to it, we don't get any surprises that somebody thinks Max and Rob and I didn't pay attention because someone brought forth an idea that nobody thought of and we couldn't think of a way to not allow it. Like I said, because they came up with all kinds of different ideas to improve the visual outlook of that wall. And so it depends what we're trying to achieve. If we're trying to achieve some kind of a more pleasing structure than a concrete structure, yeah, we could look at that and make some conditions, but we have to know what we're trying to achieve. So you'd have to at least say, we want it to be visually something, or, and don't say in harmony with the neighborhood, because that's, it depends whose tune you're listening to sometimes. And I don't mean that negatively, but it's tough to say harmony. So those are the kind of things we would look at. Is that fair?
That's not a yes.
Mr. Chair, we're past 9 o'clock. I'll make a motion that we continue the meeting tonight.
Second. Okay, motion's been made that we stay past 9 o'clock. Past Ryan Snow's bedtime. And it's been seconded. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you for that. I would want to comment on Joe's question from a staff perspective. The more clear it is from the council and the planning body, the better it is and easier it is for us to administer code. We're not in the business of being, it could be this or interpreting that. We want it as clear and as concise as possible. Conditional use got out of hand. The state brought that back in and has gone, as Scarlett said, you almost can't deny conditional use, and that pendulum has swung so far that if we can keep it out, we would prefer, and we've worked to reduce the number of items that are in conditional use. So we would oppose trying to push more into that realm when we're trying to shrink the noose.
So if I made a motion to have a public hearing on the proposed language, is it adequately expressed? Can we modify that after the public hearing? A recommendation?
Oh yeah, you can modify and you can have another public hearing. I mean, you could listen to the people and you could modify, and you can hold, you have to hold one, but you can hold more if you want to.
And I'd make a motion that we put it on the agenda for a public hearing with the language that the applicant has proposed. And we can hear and make a decision if we want to do anything with a recommendation or not after the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Been motioned and seconded, motion by Joe Chambers, second by Bob Perry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? Nay. I really would like to just drop this whole thing about retaining walls, because I think it's somewhat of we've got better things to do. That we've got the issue in front of us, and it affects one piece of property right now. Might affect others, but I think we've got a mistake was made, that Idina was led incorrectly by her contractors, and that they need one of your, I'm guessing that one of your remedies is to go to court and sue somebody and have them fix the problem. But not fun to do, but I can tell you right now that I've done it. on my property here in Providence, I had to go to court to protect my property. That way somebody came after it. So that's my feelings. We passed it. We're going to ask you to put it on, would like a public hearing, but first we need some words, right? We need to craft the change to the amendment, or we want to go right with what Idina has got?
I would just go with what Idina's got. We can take public comment on it.
Okay, do we want to leave the retroactive in there? I don't want to set precedent, but we could leave it in there.
Well, we've got the ability to change it later on after the public hearing. You know, if public hearing, there's absolutely no interest in it.
No, sure.
No one shows up to have any comments on it, then maybe it goes nowhere.
Okay.
Do you want this public hearing on the next agenda where there's another large public hearing, or do we want it on the 11th?
You're having a meeting. The motion was on the next one.
I didn't ask you. No, we don't want it on the same. This was a tough one tonight, Joe. See how close it is? I mean, we have this up here, ready to smash it and say, please sit down, order in the commission meeting. No plan. Right. Okay, so next, anybody want to go home tonight? Would anyone like to motion? We go home tonight, see our families.
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tyler. Well, no one always does it, right?
In abstention. What's wrong in abstention? I'll second it.
Okay. So motion and seconded, motion by Bob Perry, seconded by Joe Chambers, that we conclude this meeting. And all in favor?
Motion by Tyler, was it?
Yeah. I'm sorry, motion by Tyler and seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight, Idina.